Alright, so for today's advanced tutorial, we'll be using something called as our base files. We'll actually use the tutorial 5 completed tutorial files. I'm going to copy that to my desktop. And in addition to that, I'm also going to rename it. So advanced tutorial today will be covering HUD. So everything related to the heads-up display. Now this doesn't necessarily need any sort of explanation. It's sort of self-explanatory, but that being said, I'll try to show a demo of the potential of a heads-up display. Not every game necessarily needs it, and you can do things to actually include them into the game world. So there are a lot of different things available for us to HUD. This is actually just going to be a basic HUD example, so you can see how to kind of get it working in a sort of similar frame set and mindset that we've been programming thus far. So advanced tutorial HUD, well, basic HUD, HUD basic, basic HUD. And as an example today, we have past student project, and very simple, very vibrant, lots of chickens, and you just start. And already to begin with, we see we already got this health bar, some other menu. You can fire. You can even change the mode in which you look at what's going on. I can't fire. Every time I try firing, it tells me that I'm out of ammo, so I've got to manually reload and go into aim down the sights. See if I can't see what's going on my screen, so let's clean that off. We'll just wipe it all off. We can shoot off legs. We can. I think every enemy has about 2 shots, but there's a lot that goes into HUD. I think there's a special. I'm sure this does something. And the objective of this game is just collecting mustaches. But suffice it to say, lots of information. This is bullets, health. We've got a gun, which is not really part of our HUD, but yeah, maybe a little bit. And enemies killed. Here's a P for pause. It tells us up in the corner. Probably could have paused. There we go. It's still paused. It's counting up really slowly. And we can try again or go back to the main menu. That's essentially, a lot of functionality for HUD. So one more time, tutorial 5 is where we're going to be our jumping off point. Basic HUD, we're going to open this up, and we're going to see how quickly we can get this done, because I'm a little rushed today. But we'll open up the game FLA, and we'll open up Flash Develop for our project. So open new up, and there we go. I don't know what this references folder is. Actually, why is it even here? That's new. I haven't seen that one before. That's actually kind of interesting. Well, this is actually a new version of Flash Develop, and I haven't really had a chance to play around with it much. So, go figures, you'll learn something new every day. There was a way to, I have no idea what that folder is. Maybe it's for future-proofing it, some future functionality. So we'll open this up and just see where we're currently at. We run it, and this is our game. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to create a HUD that sort of sticks onto the world. And there's a lot of different possibilities, so we want it to move with our camera. And essentially what that means is either it moves with the camera or it's a layer above the camera. So theoretically, if you take a look at it like this, if level 1, I'll just set this to 0, 0. This is exactly what level 1 looks like when it loads. Now if we're inside of level 1, and that's our level base class, so this is level 1, and level 2, and every other level. If we want our level, if we take a look at a camera code, our level is the thing that actually moves. This object, everything inside of here. Now we go up 1 level, this container over here doesn't actually move. The scene 1 doesn't move, but the level does. So up, And so what we theoretically want to do is, and just to test out the theory behind this, we'll just put an object on our screen. We'll just say, doesn't really matter where you draw it and what layer you put it. I'm going to make this white. Oh, it's too late, I already made it. Make this white, let's make this white. Red's also fine. We'll just save it, run it, because we can't actually have a level in our scene because we generate it through code. And we run, that object stays on our scene. Now, I know the level goes in front of it, and that's only because of the way we add it, so we could theoretically add it behind. But because everything else in our world is dynamic, we're going to try keeping this dynamic too. I still have some old trace outputs, which is kind of a bummer. I don't know where those traces are. So let's actually just remove them. And I think I'm going to remove them and update the final tutorial files, because this will be a really weird thing to have to modify every time. So let's see if we can find that, that trace statement. There it is. That's just for firing. Let's take that out, and I'm actually going to save as over the other tutorial file, because that's going to be a bummer if we had to fix that every time. Put that there. Rail 5. This is, what is this? We have to go into game and player. Save and replace. We will also open this guy up again. And now we can see we've got 2, but it doesn't really matter. So hopefully that didn't do anything weird. Let me actually open up that tutorial to make sure it didn't do anything unsightly. Sometimes what I can do is Flash Develop's really smart, so it'll actually append the package name accordingly. But in our case, it didn't, so that's perfect. And I'm gonna just run it to make sure I got rid of that trace statement. These trace statements can be relatively annoying, so it's letting me know that Flash Develop hasn't been set up. That's fair because it's the latest version. Right click, properties, and everything to home, and paste. So there we go. And so we'll run it. No more trace statements, great. We got a lot of complex stuff in here, like bullet logic, which is kind of a bummer because generally makes things a little bit more weightier. But this is also let us see a little bit more of an advanced topic, which we'll hopefully get into in a little bit. So our HUD's actually going to be relatively simple. We're just going to make a game, new class, HUD. Base class. Now we can make this a game object, why not? There's no harm in doing that. Generate constructor matching base class, sure. And we can do a lot of fancy things with this HUD. But to start off with, let's see if we can just get the player collection and kill. So because it's a game object, it's got all the same functionality as our base game object class, so it's got all the updates and stuff. This works out fairly well because we don't have to add in our own loops, and it can clean itself up if we need it to. And it sort of resets itself as well. So I'm just going to go to the library, and all we're going to do is, let's actually just, we're going to create a new clip. We'll call it HUD. Export for ActionScript, and this is going to be game dot capital HUD. Let's double check it's there. It was found, and there we go. Now what I like to do is I actually like to draw my HUD on the screen to make sure that I've got everything there. This doesn't have to be part of levels. This could be part of objects. Why not? HUD hitbox, sure. And I'm just going to set this to 0, 0. So it's going to appear exactly where we want it to, up in the corner. We take a look. That's exactly it. Now we're still going to generate it through code, but it's going to be useful to get a reference to anything that's happening inside the world. So we can see its positioning around the screen. So we set it to 800 by 600, so 800 by 600 is what it's going to be set at. And one of the other things we're going to try doing is, first thing is, let's see if we can get player collection done. So player collection is relatively simple. Drag out a text box. And with the text box, we want to set it to dynamic text, and we want to give it some sort of name that we can access it. So we'll call this coins underscore t txt. This is sort of how you kind of set instance names in Flash. Underscore MC is for movie clip, underscore txt is for text, and btn is for button. And this is just common conventions. The color is a little weird, but you know what, I'm not going to complain. Times New Roman, let's change the font to something a little bit more interesting. So we'll change it to sample. I can't even read that. Something black. I'm not going to complain, that's an alright font. And for numbers, it doesn't really matter. Now the one important thing to note about these text boxes is if it is dynamic and you want to access it through code, you have to make sure you've got some sort of, you actually embed the font. So I'm actually going to embed the numerals. We'll tell us how many glyphs we've got. You can also embed it for ActionScript if you know what you're doing. It's used for this is used for the new advanced text, the TLF text stuff. We generally want it to be on classic. It's a lot easier to handle, and it does less weird things. So numerals, punctuation, no, we don't really need punctuation. We're going to hide numerals in there, and that's an alright size. And to just indicate that it's coins, we're just going to put something beside it. Why not a nice yellow coin? And we can even leave it as semi-transparent so you can see through it. It's not a crime. Let's drag one of these out. So it's going to look like a number of suns. Who knows? Number of suns. One other thing so that's just a shape. Could be anything. One other thing we'll probably need, and so this might actually motivate us to create some sort of HUD folder. So let's create this HUD folder now. Oh, I don't need that symbol. So the HUD folder, let's call it objects. It's gonna just be HUD. And we still don't need. HUD's already taken. Tell me about it. HUD objects. Great. Put the HUD in there. That's our HUD box, and so everything related to HUD. And the one other thing we probably want to create is, well, we'll do that later. But suffice it to say, this is just going to be our coin sticks, and we want to be able to access that through code. So this guy extends everything right, and if we go through here in our update loop, we want to be able to get how many coins the player's collected. Now in the player, we don't actually collect the coins. We hit them and we destroy them. Hit them and destroy them. Now we find where we hit those coins. If it's enemy base or coin, yeah, we destroy them. But we don't actually log anywhere that we've collected them. So what we can do is we can make a public var, which is we can call it coins collected. Now generally we do not make let's make that an integer. We generally do not make things public variables. We generally make getters or setters. So this could work and we could actually set it, but I'll show you another way to do it maybe a little later. That's a little bit safer because theoretically some other application could write over it. So what do we want? So when we collect a coin, increment that by 1. Now in our HUD class, the question is how do we access that variable? Right? How do we access this variable, coins collected, that's inside of the player class? And if you go into the HUD class, what you can do is you can say something like, because it's a game object, we can say get type. Ooh, this is a new symbol. Wow, they are doing interesting things. We can say get type, and if Flash accepts it, I've never really tried doing it like this before, but why not? Get type class. What's the class we want to get? Well, we want to get our player class, and so we can get a reference to Control space. So we get a reference to our players. We say var $player. Let's type geo game object, and we'll just get a reference to our player. And if our player is not null, if we have a player, then do all this related HUD stuff. So one of the things we're probably going to do is and let's just see if I can remember that name. So any instance variable that we do create is not actually defined in code. There is a way to set it, but because it's not default, it's more confusing than not. So I just leave it as is. But suffice it to say, even Flash Develop kind of knows that if you give it an _txt, that's kind of the type you were going for, and it lets you get away with it. Treats it almost as strong typing. So we can say, now if we have a reference to player, because it's a public variable, we can say coins, but it's not showing up. And that's also because this is a type game object, not player. So it doesn't know that it has all the player stuff. And so all we're going to do is when we get our game object, we know it's player. So we'll just cast it. There is something called generics, I believe, that'll allow you to if you send in a class type, it'll return something of the the specified type. So if I say it was player, then it would know that it was player, and I wouldn't have to cast it every time. But even just a little cast is not terrible. Here or there. We can say coins collected. Great. And so if we set our code, and you can see that it says int, it's unrelated type string, and that's a fair error. We can say cast to string. Most languages will fail you on that. Well, there we go. So we start collecting coins, and they're all being registered. Obviously, our coin is a little too large, and we can also see that our object is behind in the world. That's also because for twofold. But the most important thing, where is the size of this? Let's make this 36. Much bigger. Why it looks so big, I don't know. But the most important thing is we actually have one of these HUDs in our world. So when we generate our level, whenever it is we generate our level, we can actually add it through code. And we can do we can add it in one of two ways. We can add another event listener here. Add event listener, and it could be event.add to stage on added function, and then when this is added, do everything that we necessarily need. And the question is, why do we need this? Because we actually need a reference to our parent. Now we don't have a parent until we're added to the stage, so we can't say parent.add child, whatever we want. We also want a reference to our HUD, so we can do fancy things. So we're going to say private var HUD is of type HUD game HUD. That imports all right, and we can say add player.add child HUD. We also want to initialize it, so we say equals new HUD. There we go. And now we've got control over it. Now I can show you two things. One is it should show up over objects, which is great. Now because it's also having transparency, we can kind of see through it, so it's not as obtrusive. And not necessarily everything that you'd want it to be, but no, it doesn't hurt. And every time we die, it kind of gets reset too. So that's perfect. So it's cleaning up all right. Except I think my animation state started a little weird way, because I glitched through that wall. Go to the next level, and it all resets to 0. So everything we do kind of resets to 0. Now, if we didn't add it as a parent, we just added it as a child, then it would just be part of our world. So our HUD would be in our world, but there it is. That's how you find it. Which kind of makes it fun and interesting at the same time. Alright. So that's generally why we don't add it as a parent. Now if it's a single screen and you want to position it on each screen, then that's fair. You can do fun things like that if it is a child. And if you want to include it in the level itself, you can do that. You can actually add all the HUD elements as part of your base level class and code them where you'll want them to be, and that would work for you. But this is going to assume that you generally want it to follow you. Why does that happen? I'll never know. And there's also one other thing, because the HUD is not a child of the level, it doesn't actually alpha out, which is interesting. But still, not the end of the world. So, basic HUD, and it's working. That's text. We've got a static element on our screen. Now, the one other more advanced thing is, so what if we want to track our player's health? No, you're going to tell me, but the player doesn't have health. Fair enough, he doesn't have health. So why don't we add it? We're going to say public oh my goodness. Public var health. Now, to be fair, if I was going to use this in more than one place, I'd probably make a base unit class and have all the units do have this form of logic. Because for right now, we're just trying to show off something on the player. It makes little to no sense. And you can do really fancy things where, enemies each have their own health bars, and other objects that each have their own health bars, so you can see the damage you're doing to an object. Similar in a similar way that you might kind of see in games with multiple units. But not super important. We're going to say health is equal to 3. And what that also means is every time we get hit, we're going to not just destroy us, we're going to destroy us only, let's just say after the game's over. So we could say if health is greater than 0, is less than 0, then we'll destroy us. So we can say health minus minus. So subtract 1 from health, and also we want to say that kill the enemy we collide with. So enemy dot destroy. So it gives us 3 chances. So in this level, I'd have to actually run into all 3. There we go. So I can run into that's 1, 2, 3, and restart. So you have to be really, really bad at this level, but it's 3 chances. And why this is important or interesting is because we may want to actually create another HUD object, and the other HUD objects might be a little bit more advanced. Now, advancement might be something like this. We could say, call this player health indicator. Perfect. That's going to be a HUD element, and we'll just do something really simple with it. We'll just say well, what do we want to say? We'll do an animation with it. I was considering something else, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. So we're going to say that if a player's health is full, all we're going to do is we're going to have it, full bar. Let's make it red or something. And yeah, red's fine. And we're going to have 3 states. Two, 3. Yeah, that's alright. Not necessarily even, but well, actually we kind of do need 4, so another 2. And Alright, so I just realized at some point, um, my mic got muted, so I am not actually going to go back over the code. The code is all going to be the same anyway, so why bother? But what I will try to do is just briefly explain what happened. Most of it should theoretically make sense. A lot of it should follow the same kind of process. This is scaling. So either through animation frames or, accessing it dynamically through code. You can move its position, you can scale it, do anything you want to it. That's fair. You can even do fancy things like change the color. I've added another enemy text, player health count, and we're just trying to figure out the best kind of method to get the enemy notify the HUD of the enemy death. So there's two ways to do it. One is to do it through the enemy itself, and I'm showing that method, actively showing that method right now. There is another method. I don't know. But I'll try showing that off a little later. Most of this should kind of make sense, so I don't think I'm actually going to redo it. It takes a lot of time and effort to kind of get to this stage, so and planning, and I don't have tons and tons of time, but most of this should make sense anyway. What we're doing, you follow the process, kind of see what I'm doing, kind of imagine my voice over top of everything that's going on, and if you can, good on you. And silly comments and mistakes, but for the most part, everything's fine. We are grabbing a reference to the HUD, just calling enemy died, incrementing our enemy death count by 1 every time an enemy dies. And I believe it's working. I think. Yes, it works. Great. And in this current stage and scenario, I'm actually launching with the slow bullets for some reason. Yep, okay, 2. Man, don't use these bullets for squat. I'm not going to hit nothing. Yeah, I got it. Okay, anyway, so they're dead. Now here's the question. We go to another screen, everything gets to 0. So what if you wanted to keep a property across? Properties across, maybe? What you can theoretically do is you can make a singleton class. So because death count is actually defined here, we can retain that value across the board. So maybe I'll show you singleton in a little bit, but anyway, so this was one method, and we died. We actually call this function straight off the enemy class, like where it happens. Now, the reason why I don't necessarily like this method is because you don't generally think to look inside of an enemy class to see what happens on the HUD, or to know that something's happened on the HUD. What makes more sense is that we dispatch an event, so this event, let the stage know that an enemy's died, and let the stage handle that. So same kind of thing. All we do is go to the level, listen for that event, add event, was it all space? Control space? And add event listener, we're going to say enemy, doesn't know it can listen for this event, so that's enemy base dot enemy on enemy death on enemy dead. And so over here we can just generate an event handler. Listen for the event, you know exactly what you're looking for and what you're doing with it. Put up a lower update loop, and we can just say, because we have a reference to HUD, HUD dot not update, HUD dot enemy died. Same thing, a little bit more work, but it's nicer and neater. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how do you retain values across one level to the next. Now there are numbers of different ways to do that. Saving and loading of information might work out well for you. One of the possible ways is actually a singleton class. So similar to our key, which is it's not really a singleton because you can have more than one. A singleton essentially is a class in which only one can ever exist. So no matter what you do to that class, it's kind of always there. What that also means is, well, we'll see what it gets into. Now, a singleton class is actually a little interesting because it's got a static, private, var instance. which is actually an instance of the HUD itself. Like, it's got a reference to a class inside of it. Now, which class? And the other thing we do is we also static private var allow instantiation. It's a Boolean. False by default, so we don't have to do anything. So what we do is we say static public function get instance. We say a get instance, we get a reference to this class, returns a type HUD. And we only ever want one. So what do? We say if there isn't an instance. Now you may see this in possible other tutorials as well, but it's powerful, but you have to also know when to use it. There is an instance. If there is an instance, then allow instantiation should be true. Set our instance to be equal to a new HUD. Perfect. And then set allow instantiation to be false. Then what we do at the end of this is always return instance. Perfect. Now there is a couple of nuances with this. Firstly, we shouldn't ever be able to destroy it. Because if we destroy it, if we call the destroy function, it'll remove it from the array. We can't create a new one because we just want the old one. So what can we do? We can say something like, we can override our destroy function, which we've already done. This will be the second time. And what do we want to do with it? Actually, nothing. We can actually just override it and leave it blank, and it should function the way we want it to. The other thing we want to do is if a person tries to instantiate it, if allow instantiation is false, throw an error. So, throw, and this is just, this is just a safety precaution, so you let yourself know, or other programmers who may be using your class know that, hey, this isn't the way you're supposed to use it. So throw new error. What's the error going to be? Just type in a message. HUD singleton class call get instance method. That'd be one way. Just let them know. Friendly reminder, by the way. So if we were to try to run this right now, it would blow up. It would throw our error and say, oh, by the way, yeah. And who's throwing it? Well, the level class. Why is it throwing it? Well, we already know. Well, we already know, right? Because we're accessing it. We're actually trying to instantiate it. What we have to do instead is we could say HUD.getInstance straight off the class. It'll instantiate it itself, except it didn't. But I did it right this time. This just looks wrong because that isn't my file. So, let's try this one more time and see if it actually takes. Doesn't seem to be taking. Why is that? Okay, let's just stop at this line. Debug. Step into. No, that's not the line. So yeah, this is how I know it's blowing up. Okay. So we can save Flash. Okay, maybe it'll see that now. We save it. Sometimes it it doesn't care. They'll put it in release mode. Release mode give you your own ability to debug it. Oh, weird. Nation folder. Maybe I've locked controls over it. Oh, and I've got like 5 copies open. So if I can't push out to it, then fair enough. Sometimes that can happen if you have SWFs piling up in the background and you don't see them. Anyway, we'll just try keeping this a little short, a little bit more time, and hopefully we'll be able to see what I was talking about. So open up the game, run it. What was I talking about? Oh, so it works, right. So we go to level, kill an enemy, go to the next level, and we should still see it. Except we didn't. it's actually just hanging, which is weird. What's the program? Oh, right, I know why it's hanging. Oh, I think. So this has to do with our list.length because of the way we're looping through it, and this is why while loops are generally a bad thing, but we can say for var now let's create a for loop for it. So we'll say we'll create a for loop, kill that, pull you back, and use our game object list.length to fix that. So game object list.length. So well, it's less than the length, but we actually want to count down just because we're killing all our objects. So our length is getting shorter. So -1. So it's greater than or equal to 0. Minus. And so just count down our list and then just delete everything at I. So it's essentially the same thing. Not one line, but it'll let our HUD work. And the reason why the other one wasn't working is because it was calling destroy and it wouldn't remove it because we killed our super. And that can sometimes happen, depending on what you're trying to do with it. So this method is just a fail-safe way to kind of program that move all function. Yep. So get one of these, run to this, and it's a 4 enemies killed, right? All kind of tracked up. Greetings. Alright, so that all kind of works, and the reason why we're also getting this kind of like fun little thing, which is we get to the end of the level and then it bumps up to 4 is because all those enemies are being killed at the end of the level. But the point is that, suffice it to say, we are trapping that information. What you could theoretically do is also trap to see whether or not the level is done. So is the level over? And if the level is over, then say like var level is destroyed. Boolean is equal to true. So promote to class member. Perfect. And over here we can just say it's equal to true. So it's equal to false by default. And then when we're doing all our additional stuff, we can say only if is destroyed is false. That's one of the benefits of it, because now we have control over that kind of thing. And so even though we kind of run into them, we get like 3 chances at it, and then we go to the next level, and full life, all right. And that's one of the other things could theoretically be trapped. Maybe the HUD could control it. Not a good idea generally to let the HUD control it. You could let the level control it, and maybe the level reads it in from the HUD or from a save data file to see what the player's last health was. And if there was none, just use default. But yeah, you can do fancy things. And even now, I think if we die and the level just restarts, my bad, should have done it from here. We start with 4, so it's just like all like points. There is no restart state in our HUD, and we can probably just create a reset state that resets that variable. But there's a lot of different options for us, so we can already see that. I think I've showed everything that I want to. I'm sorry that my mic died halfway through, and a couple interruptions. But for the most part, I think we are all good. And I hope that's useful, makes sense, and can be used in your games. Probably one more wishlist item I would have liked to have shown you is having health bars on enemies and players and stuff. Really not so bad, but the concepts are all generally the same. Alright. So, take care, take it easy. I'll drop this on the... and we'll see you next time for maybe another advanced tutorial. Hopefully with no more bugs.